I am Giacomo Zucco. Here is my Twitter or whatever, and my email. As I think Pavel said, I am a former theoretical physicist and a former technology consultant in Accenture. And since 3 years, I focused on the BHB network project, which is a arbitrage box between two different realities. On one side, we have the financial incumbents. They want to study blockchain. They have a lot of resources for that, but they don't know anything. They know very little, and what they know is wrong. And they don't know how to access to the information. On the other side, we have the geeks, the nerds, the experts, the crazy anarchists. They know a lot of stuff, but they are not very good in creating bridges with the industrial world. So we do that. We take money from banks. We use money to sponsor open source, free open source developing mostly on Bitcoin. We take information back and we package and sell this information to banks, insurance companies, and other consultancy companies, etc. We are mainly working with banks right now. So today I will talk about Bitcoin because in a blockchain conference, sometimes it's right to talk about the only one blockchain that doesn't make any sense, which is Bitcoin. Of course, this is just my opinion, and I know that there are very different opinions about this kind of Bitcoin maximalist, so I'm just giving you my view, but it's right, and the others are wrong. So enjoy. So we will talk about scalability and governance in Bitcoin. This is because a lot of people joining this kind of topic and this kind of ecosystem for the first time are very easily impacted by this kind of huge debate. Everybody is talking about the scalability debate, the governance debate, and it's something that will probably impact a newcomer very soon in a very important way. I do not think that this is the most important topic on Bitcoin right now. I think that topics like privacy and fungibility are way more important, but this is for sure the topic that you will face when you join this ecosystem. I mean, how many of you have some experience with Bitcoin? Raise your hand. Good. So how many of you have at least once took part to a scalability-related debate, Bcash? Raise your hand. So hard forks. Oh, so you are still virgin. You're still out of this, but that's good. But so when you will actually enter this kind of debate, you will know my opinion first, which is the right one. So great. I will try not to influence you too much. So scalability. Scalability in Bitcoin is very, 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 very bad. Scalability in blockchain in general is very, very, very bad. With scalability, I mean the ability of the system to scale up without decreasing its ability to scale up, maintaining the same characteristic. So why is its scalability in Bitcoin very bad? Bitcoin is practically Bitcoin is a set of 4 different technologies, mostly. I usually explain Bitcoin answering to 4 different questions: where, who, what, when. These are the questions that you have to actually ask yourself in order to create a permissionless finance system, a way to transmit money or wealth or value over the internet without a central counterparty. You need to know who is keeping the register, since there is no central party keeping it, and the answer is distributed ledger. This technology scales pretty well. There is not a scalability problem here. I mean, of course, economies of scale are better if you keep everything inside a giant server ad hoc. So PayPal is not using our computer for storage. They are using their supercomputers, their servers. So scalability is better in a centralized system, but it's not so bad in a decentralized system. The second technology is digital signature, ACDSA, cryptography. This scales not so good. This is not so good as a centralized system again, but it does scale pretty well. For example, eCash, David Chaum system were pretty scalable. Proof of work does scale also. If you think about that as the way to create scarcity on the internet, for example, Hashcash, but the blockchain part, which is the invention that Satoshi Nakamoto put into Bitcoin in order to create a trustless chronology, in order to answer to the when question, this part doesn't scale at all. Why that? Because all this part doesn't force everybody to communicate with everybody. You can, somebody can give me a digital signature, I can check it on my computer without having to do with all the rest of the network. If I have to check a proof of work, somebody will create an hash, I will check the hash collision alone without asking to everybody else. But when you have to have a single unique history, a single unique transaction history, putting that history inside the proof of work, creating a blockchain, that's the first time where we actually lose all the scalability property that were present in the previous system, like eCash and B-Money, and etc. So Bitcoin, from the beginning, from the inception, was a horribly not scalable idea. But was the only way to create a trustless chronology without any kind of central party to manage the anti-double spending problem. Of course, if you are new to the blockchain space, and even if you are not very new, you will hear a lot of people telling you, yeah, blockchain is good, of course we need blockchain without Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not so interesting, but the underlying technology, yeah, that's the future. Actually, it's the opposite. The underlying technology, blockchain, is a necessary evil. Blockchain is bad for Bitcoin. We don't need blockchain without Bitcoin. What we actually do need in order to scale, and what we are working on with the Lightning networks and other stuff, is the opposite. It's Bitcoin without blockchain. Of course, without, there is a little star here, we cannot really do without the blockchain at all. But we can stay out of the blockchain, which is inherently not scalable, very, very bad for scalability, for the great part of the time, and then we can hit the blockchain only when we really, really need it. Blockchain, to make an example, is like a perfect judiciary system. You don't want to go to trial every day. It's not that, yeah, the judiciary system is efficient and I will use it to manage every contract. So it will be fast, I will be cheap. No, it's the opposite. The judiciary system is low, is expensive. You only need to hit that after every kind of private, let's say, contractual fight or litigation fails. So it's a common knowledge that the blockchain is fast, but blockchain is actually very, very slow as a system because every node in the network has to reach consensus redundantly, not in a sharded way, but redundantly, about every single part of the consensus. Blockchain is not cheap at all. Right now we think that, a wire transfer is expensive and the Bitcoin transaction is cheap, only because of three reasons. First, bank transfers are expensive because they can, because they are a cartel, they cannot be challenged by competition, and so they can take prices very high, and also they have to manage a lot of legal, not technical. Technically speaking, PayPal is perfect. Politically speaking, PayPal can charge very, very, very high prices because they are hyper-regulated. They have to manage chargebacks and identity and a lot of legal stuff. But Bitcoin is actually very, very expensive if you think about it. One Bitcoin transaction, even if your fees are just maybe right now, less than $1, maybe 30 cents, then a little bit more, but yeah, $1, around $1 now, and changing every day because of SegWit and whatever, the cost of a transaction goes around $10 to $13. The part that you don't see is the cost of mining, which is diluted in the inflation tax over every holder. So when you send a Bitcoin transaction, you pay just for one part, but everybody else pay for the rest. So blockchain is not fast, blockchain is low, it's not cheap, it's expensive, and it's not private. Right now you will hear some consultants explaining you that they are using the blockchain to protect data, to protect user privacy. Let's put our data on the blockchain so it's encrypted. That's actually very, very funny because the blockchain is not encrypted at all. Blockchain is completely shared, traceable, public, and that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing because it creates a lot of problem with use cases where you actually do need privacy. For example, you don't want your competitor to see everything that you do. You don't want a potential kidnapper to look into your financial records. And also, you don't want, if you want a money system, a payment system, you need fungibility. You need every Bitcoin to be interchangeable with every other Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is not so fungible right now. So all these problems of Bitcoin are due to the blockchain, which is actually an evil, but a necessary evil, because without that, we cannot have a trustless system. But we have to learn to use it in the less possible, to use it only when really necessary. So this is the scalability problem with Bitcoin. Of course, one can think, this problem doesn't exist. It's just like that because you decided that you have to have 1 megabyte blocks in Bitcoin, so you are just processing for 10 minutes every block on average. So you're processing 7 transactions per second. Right now they're a little bit more because of Segwit, but still, you can have bigger blocks and you can have faster blocks. Wrong. Satoshi Nakamoto did not choose a 1 megabyte block and a 10 minutes block time because he was actually against velocity or against throughput or against scalability. The reason why Satoshi Nakamoto did choose this kind of trade of limitations is because when you create a block, everybody else in the network has to download, validate, and build on top of the block. And if the propagation and the validation on the network is lower than the actual rate of production of blocks, what you're left with is a very, very strong trend of centralization of mining and on validation. Let's imagine, to understand this, let's imagine 2 extremes. Let's imagine that you are Satoshi Nakamoto. Then you pay for the dinner, I imagine. You are Satoshi Nakamoto, you're happy, you have discovered the blockchain concept, and now you have to choose some magic numbers. Your first hypothesis is actually to choose a block which is very, very small, 500 bytes, so basically you can fit 1 transaction per block, circa. And then you have a difficulty that adjusts to have, on the average, 1 new block every 2 weeks. So right now, you have a very, very safe choice. Your blockchain is super small. I can have a full validating node in my cell phone. I can have a full validating node in my Raspberry Pi. I can use satellite, not just to transmit transaction, but to transmit the entire blockchain. I can store my blockchain in microchips, in hardware. I can go over Tor. I can bypass the Great Firewall of China. I am totally free to do whatever I want. Everybody can validate. Problem, nobody can translate. Because with this kind of, with 1 block every 2 weeks and with 1 transaction every block, basically, if people start to actually use Bitcoin, it will be very, 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 very expensive to get there. Of course, somebody will be able to, but almost nobody. But everybody will be able to validate that payments. On the other side of the spectrum, let's imagine that you, Satoshi, go on the other way around. You create 2 gigabyte blocks, and you say, why just wait for 10 minutes? I want a new block on average, a new confirmation, every 0.3 seconds. So, super fast. Send, confirm. Great. So, right now we have a lot of transactions for every block, everybody can translate because the cost will be very, very, very cheap. Problem. Right now, your blockchain is super huge in a few days. You cannot use Tor anymore. You cannot bypass the Great Firewall of China. You cannot use satellite connection. You cannot put your validation node in your cell phone. Indeed, my cell phone doesn't have a validation node. It connects to a full node, which is in my home, my office in Switzerland using Tor. But if that is possible because the blockchain is not, the blocks are not so big. If they were, I could not use Tor for this connection, and so my privacy will be at risk. So Satoshi just decided to stay here. Here is a good place, maybe, is a good compromise, but still is not super decentralized. You know that, how many of you in this room maintain a full node, a Bitcoin full node? So probably in the 10, or if I'm not looking well, in the 20. That's very bad. We are the blockchain conference. The main production blockchain existing in this world is Bitcoin. It's free. It's actually free. You don't have to pay a subscription to run a Bitcoin node. And it's the only way to be sure of your payments. So if you're not using a full node, you are trusting someone else. So what was the point of Bitcoin again from the beginning? So the situation is not perfect. We can work on it. But it's not terrible even. It's not that nobody here is running a full node. A lot of people are trusting. Some people are really independent. So we are here. Of course, these are two ways to go to centralization, because if everybody can validate but nobody can translate, then every time you will want to spend, instead of spending Bitcoin on the chain, you will actually use a Coinbase transaction. So not really your money. You will actually use a MySQL transaction inside the Coinbase system because it's too expensive to actually use the blockchain. So in this way, you will centralize the spending habits of the user. In this way, you will centralize the validation behavior of the user. Bad and bad. Probably the trade-off is, in my opinion, which is right, a little bit too much here. It should be even more conservative on the other way around, because the problem of centralization of mining and nodes is a little bit more serious than the problem that you cannot pay coffee with Bitcoin. Paying coffee is great. I just had a coffee. It was free, actually, but it's not the main purpose of the first trustless financial system in the world. So, possible solution to this. There are conservative solutions in which we choose to keep the same trade-off choice that was done initially by Satoshi, and we try to work around it. So how? For example, we can, these are in order of preference. Very, very bad solution, but for some application it's okay. Trusted third party. For example, I do not need to use Bitcoin, I just need to invest in Bitcoin. So why do I need to eat the blockchain? I just ask Coinbase to buy some Bitcoin for me and to keep it. I don't need to manage private keys to go over Tor to protect my privacy. I'm just an investor. For many, many applications of Bitcoin, which is the new digital gold, for example, for some e-commerce related application or finance related application, this will be good enough. Then you have the semi-trusted hardware. I don't know how many of you know about OpenDime. OpenDime is a very nice idea, too. Okay, raise your hand again. Who knows about OpenDime? Oh, look at it. OpenDime is a very cool thing. It's a little hardware. It's a little bit like a hardware wallet to keep your Bitcoin, but instead of using it to keep it, you use it to transact. It's a very cheap, chip, and you give it physically to the other person, so you can actually buy your coffee. Well, maybe a coffee is, you can buy probably a double cappuccino and just leave your OpenDime to the other person, and they will be able to verify semi-trustlessly. They will still have to trust a little bit the producer of the hardware, a little bit. This is a good solution. Then you have the trustless hubs. For example, you have one giant hub with payment channels so that you can transact Bitcoin for free and instantly, finally, but only because you are passing through a central hub. And then you have the most exciting innovation that in this day should be finally live, which is the Lightning Network. Or we could just admit that the blockchain doesn't scale, and we could just start to try to find different architecture instead of the blockchain one. Some people is working on that. For example, Peter Todd is the Bitcoin core developer, is working on since a lot of time on proof chains and tree chains idea, which is the idea that you are using a blockchain, but not for every kind of asset. You use a generic blockchain, and then inside that you create shards where specific assets are locked, and you create a specific sub-blockchain of every blockchain. So I have to go faster. Anyway, there are other solutions, and I'm late. So is this problem urgent? Somebody says that it is, because somebody says that you need anti-fragility, and if you have a lot of adoption, if a lot of people is using blockchain, then you will have more protection. But the thing is that probably you're losing the centralization. And also there is an argument from competition. So if you don't scale Bitcoin now, other currency will take over. But this argument is not necessarily true, because if other currency can take over and offer the same value proposition, they probably should take over, and we will end up with a richer ecosystem. So I don't have time to finish actually the governance problems. So yeah, we'll stop here and take question only about the. There was also an image of the meme, but okay. And we're finished.